Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to the Monday weekly recap video, start of a brand new fresh week. It's still a little bit dark outside and snowing softly, so we're up here in the plant room again, which is very cozy. I always prefer to be outside, just so you guys know, because I like the natural background and the natural lighting. But up here it's very cozy. Our plant lights are mostly all LED, so they don't put out very much heat, but it gets very hot in this room, like very quickly. I don't know if it's all the plant energy in here, but if you see my face getting more and more red throughout this video, that's what's going on. Okay, so there's only one thing I want to talk about before we get into the videos and start answering questions, and that is our Garden Answer Gathering event, which is happening in June. We've been sharing some details with you guys as we've known them throughout these Monday videos, but I have a little bit more information. So there are 3 separate events. We're going to link them all down below. There's one multi-day event, which starts Thursday night, June the 4th, opening social, and then it spans over the next 2 days with multiple garden tours, classes, service project. There's all kinds of stuff going on during that event. And then there are 2 other events happening on June 7th. That's a Sunday. It's just kind of shorter, condensed version of that first event. And it'll be a garden tour through our garden, and then my parents are opening up their garden center on a Sunday, which they never do, for those of you who want to go check it out. It's a pretty magical place that time of year, so I thought that sounded really fun. Anyway, the tickets are going on sale January 25th at 9 a.m. Mountain Time, so you'll have to figure out what time that means for you based on where you live. They are going to be sold on a website called Eventbrite, which we will also link down below. I would highly recommend that you pre-register for buying a ticket. It's a process that you have to go through either way, and if you're already registered, then you'll be able to buy your ticket a lot faster. The only reason I mention that is because last year we sold 60 tickets and they sold out in 3 minutes, which is something we did not expect would happen, not even close. I thought we would eventually sell all the tickets, but I thought it would take a little bit longer. So I have no idea what this year is going to be like. I mean, we're offering a lot more tickets because we added those next 2 events instead of just having the one event available. So anyway, pre-register, all the information will be down below, all the links to all the events and all that. Okay, let's get into the videos for this week. The first one was reshaping one of our flower beds, and we just had the most glorious day. We've been having the most glorious weather this winter. I have absolutely no complaints about like the snow today. It's totally not a big deal because it's going to snow this morning and then it's going to warm up into the 40s and it'll all go away. And it just keeps doing that to where we can get out in our garden. Anyway, in that video, I went out and I edged some of our grass to reshape a flower bed right in front of our Hebe statue. It was super satisfying to do. Diane said, I want to widen my flower beds and have wavy edges, but my lawn sprinkler system is for a rectangular lawn. I know that flowers have much less water requirements than grass. Do I need to rework the lawn sprinklers every time I widen a flower bed into the lawn area? We do. Just because you want the water coverage to be proper on what you're trying to water. So if the sprinklers are watering the grass, you need to move your sprinkler to where it covers your grass properly and it's not beating your flowers. Because a lot of time if you leave your sprinkler inside of a flower bed that you've widened and then you plant some stuff, whatever you plant nearby may get hit by that lawn sprinkler. Overhead water in our area is not good on flowers and things like that. Grass, it's fine because the water, it's such a fine blade, the water just, sheds right off of it. But if it settles on any boulder leaf flower or perennial shrub, whatever, it creates hard water deposits. So it's super important for us to do that. And anyway, you kind of figure out, we've showed you in videos kind of how we do that. And it's just something we make a practice of every time we reshape a bed. Quilt Addicts Anonymous says, how do you keep weeds from taking over without laying down garden fabric or mulch? So we do lay down mulch quite often because I like everything to look really clean and tidy, which does help with weed suppression a little bit. We also use that flat edge shovel to edge about 2 to 3 times a season for a really sharp, clean edge, but it does get cut every week when the lawn is mowed. The weed whacker goes along the edge and you can hold it a certain way so the string is more vertical rather than horizontal, and you can keep that edge looking pretty tidy for most of the year if you keep up on it. I think that's the key, is not letting it go too far between times. Barbara said, question for you, do you wear a Fitbit? If so, how many steps a day do you take? So I've never worn one here since we moved into this house. I wore one day at the garden center in spring when we were doing spring setup and we had plant loads coming in and it was just a wild day. And I walked just right under 10 miles that day at work. So from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., almost 10 miles, which was pretty crazy. I don't walk like that now, just because the sense of urgency is not quite as great here when I'm working in the garden, but boy, down there we moved a lot. Benji said, love the videos that you share with all of us. Thank you. What do you do with your leftover grass? So we've showed you in, I can't even remember what video. Anyway, we did show in a video where we load up all of our stuff in a cart, and there's a big pasture right out front where we lay out sod out there if it's not something we need to repurpose in somewhere else in our garden. If we're doing great big sections, like when we lifted all of the grass on the west side to make way for a new garden, we actually had somebody who wanted the sod. And if it's ever like a big enough patch, we always put it out like to friends and family, like, hey, anybody who needs sod, come and get it. It's just sitting here in rolls, and that way it's not wasted. But either way, it's just laid out on the ground, and it just kind of becomes like, goes back to the earth, I guess. Carrie says, can you please explain the difference between annual and perennial? So an annual is a plant that you have to replant every single year. It dies over the course of the winter, and a perennial is something that comes back every single year. Joseph says, this is what I did all day. I was doing a new flower bed. Do you have any recommendations on tools to edge grass? So we use the combination of the step edger. I have a half-size Fiskars step edger that's really nice. I like the handle on the top. And then we use a DeWalt battery-operated weed trimmer, weed whacker. The nice thing about the battery-operated type is that you can flip it upside down, and that's when it trims vertically rather than horizontally. And you don't get any like gas kicking back in your face. So the battery-operated one has been really nice. Katie said, I have cement edging around my flower beds, but I love the look of yours. Do you have to clean up the edges constantly, or does the grass stay out of the flower beds for the most part? We pretty much do constantly. Like I mentioned before, we stay on a rigid schedule of keeping things up like that, and that way it's not a big deal. It's super fast to go along with the edger and just make sure it's a nice trim edge, and then it's never a big chore. Celebrate Life says, I was just wondering why you don't use border edging for your flower beds. So personal opinion, I've never seen a flower edge that I love except for stacked rock. I love stacked rock, and it's something we may do here. And brick, I like brick edging, which we did on the west side, kind of along the driveway, mainly just to keep the mulch and the gravel separate from each other. But like in terms of grass coming up to your flower beds, I don't prefer having a border because I like to change things so often, and that's probably the main reason. I don't want anything in my way, and I want the ability to be able to make my flower beds shaped however I want. Okay, so moving on to the next video, which is pruning a couple trees in my garden. So in that video, I pruned up 2 different kinds of crabapple. One was a Royal Raindrops, which grows more kind of pyramidal, and then a Spring Snow crabapple, which is a multi-trunk, and it was just a complete thick mess that I needed to tackle. So I just showed you guys my process of what I do this time of year with those types of issues. Susan said, what do you use to keep your pruning tools sharp? So we did a video about that last winter. We'll link it down below so you can see the whole process. Michaela asks, what is your current watering schedule for winter? So it's different. All of our winters are wildly different. I mean, for those of you who have been watching our videos for a long time, you might remember 3 years ago, I think it's been 3 winters, we had 52 inches of snow and negative 17-degree temperatures. And then this winter, like right now, it's in the 40s in the day, and then at night it maybe gets into the high 20s. I mean, it's just perfection, which means that things, aren't, I don't know, we get so warm, especially in the greenhouse, that I'm seeing things kind of sprout. So I keep things on a pretty tight every 2 week watering schedule, especially the stuff that's in the greenhouse or underneath cover, like in our porch areas that aren't receiving any moisture from like when we get rain or any bit of snow. Cheryl said, I didn't see many Christmas lights out. When do you take them down, and how long does it take you? So they're almost all down. I think the only Christmas lights on the outside are on the house. And it's been a little bit like snowy / slick, and so it's really not safe to get on the roof and take them down. So the next nice day that we have where the roof is clear and dry, we'll probably get those down. It takes a couple of days. This whole house though and barn has been a total chaos over the last couple of weeks because we've been doing a massive amount of organization, and like we bought brand new totes for everything because I was still using like random cardboard boxes from our move 3 years ago, and things were just a total mess. And yeah, so it's been chaos, but I'm going to show you guys up in the loft since we did a video. I'm going to show you once we get it kind of done what it looks like up there because I'm like, I don't know, I'm kind of proud of it. Susanna said, thanks for the pointer. Should I do the same with my white lilac? No, do not prune anything that blooms in early spring until after it's done blooming, and only if you need to. If you prune it now, you will prune off blooms. Now, that may not be a big deal. Like the crab apples, I pruned off potential blooms on those branches, which for me, it wasn't a big deal. And if you have a huge lilac that you just need to thin out and you don't mind missing a few blooms, then you can definitely do it. But if you want to enjoy those blooms first, you can let it bloom and then you can trim off what you need to. But those type of plants, they set their buds for blooms for the next year on their current year's growth. So they bloom on old wood. Bryony says, do you have an update on the 3 gorgeous black cat pussy willows you planted in spring 2019? So you may have seen right next to that spring snow crabapple, there was one of them, which I'm going to be pruning very harshly here very soon. I want to bring in a bunch of branches anyway and enjoy those catkins in here, kind of force them a little bit early. The 2 I planted on the outside of the fence, everything out there is just struggling a little bit. The soil is like bright white when it's dry. I mean, it's so high pH. One of them's doing okay, and the other one, I looked at it the other day, I think it's still alive. I think it might just take some extra babying this year. But anyway, they're all still alive. One of them's doing great, second one's medium, and the third one is kind of... Next video was houseplant haul, new plants for a new year. And in that video, I just showed off my brand new plant haul because every time I get my Christmas decorations down inside, I feel like I need to go buy furniture or plants. One of the two, because it feels like too open to me. And then I'm also very excited for spring. So getting a little bit of fresh color and fresh green around me always helps. Dana said, does the cold frame get cold enough for those bulbs you planted in the self-watering containers? I sure hope so. I think so. All of the bulbs look really good. I kind of dug around in there the other day just to make sure, like water-wise, we weren't rotting them out or any of that business, and they look great. So we're thinking about moving them out here, though, probably this week because it's been so mild. They may as well just be out. Laura said, can you please remind us the channel you watch for houseplants? Yes, Amanda with Plantarina. We'll link her channel down below. Amazing information about houseplants. Kathy said, I was wondering about the plants behind you in the greenhouse. Are they dead or just dormant? So all of those plants in the greenhouse are dormant. They're plants that I was going to use for projects last year, just ran out of time. So I've got them all earmarked, most all of them earmarked for projects this year. So a lot of them have been cut back, like perennials have been cut back right to the top of their pots. So it just looks like a pot of dirt right now, but there is a living root ball in that container that will flush back once it gets warm enough. There's a few shrubs in there. We might give you a tour. I mean, I don't know. Let me know if that's something you would like to see. I mean, it won't be much to see just because there's not a lot of growth or anything like that, but there seemed to be quite a number of you who thought that would be a fun video. I don't know. Let me know. Julie said, what I would love to hear about is your large collection of plants in your greenhouse. So kind of the same thing. Did you winter these over? Are they new for next year, or some of the plants you propagated have grown from seeds? How do you know what to put in the greenhouse versus those that you bring into your plant room? So anything like succulent-esque or citrus or things that can do well as houseplants, I'll bring inside. Other things like containerized Japanese maples that might be like kind of on the edge in terms of zone. If it gets really cold here, those in containers just don't do as well. So we try to move everything we can into the greenhouse just to make sure that it survives from year to year. So anyway, I can talk more about that if we do a tour through that greenhouse. Lorena said, have you ever done multiple houseplants in a container, like with more than one plant type in a container? Yes, I used to do that all the time. You just want to make sure that you're picking out plants that have compatible light needs and water needs. That's the most important part. And they should cohabitate together fairly nicely. Alexander said, Laura, will you please do a houseplant tour? And that is such a highly requested thing, and it's something we may do. And like I said, it's been chaos in our house the last couple weeks because of all the organizing, and I've been pulling stuff out of closets, and it's just been a mess. But as soon as I get everything kind of like back into closets and back in order, that might be something that we do. And I do have a few more to show this time around now that I brought some new stuff home. Darren said, what is the blue evergreen behind you at the beginning of the video? So that is a blue spruce. I think it's called baby blue. Hold on, let me check. I have to watch the video back real quick to make sure. Should I watch the ad all the way through? Yes, it is a baby blue spruce, which I'm very excited to have because I have a spot in my garden where I want to plant it. They are a zone 2 through 8, and they grow about 15 feet wide and 15 to 25 feet tall. So it's going to be the perfect evergreen for big bulb multicolor Christmas lights. Next question was if we could do an orchid care video. So we did a very basic orchid care guide a while ago. We'll link that down below. Boy, I hope I remember to link everything down below that I've said we would link. But I would recommend that you go to the channel called Miss Orchid Girl. She does everything that has to do with orchids, super knowledgeable and super successful with her plants. So I would definitely check her channel out. Britt says, did you use biotone when repotting? I don't when I'm repotting houseplants. I feel like it's a little bit overkill. I do that for things outside. If I move anything, like I'm going to be moving my amaryllis outside and planting them in the flower beds later, which right now they're technically a houseplant. Later when I plant them in a flower bed, I will add a little bit of biotone in the soil. But for houseplants, I just use fresh potting mix and the appropriate potting mix for whatever I'm potting, and then use the appropriate fertilizer on like a 2 to 4 week schedule, depending on what type of plant it is. And Joanne says, this is a really silly question, but I'm really confused about what indirect sunlight means. And it's not a silly question. I think a lot of people have asked that. Would you consider showing where you put them in your home, which we will if we do the houseplant tour. But bright indirect sunlight means like if you have a beam of sun coming in like right here onto the table next to me, you would want to place a plant right next to that beam of sun so that its leaves aren't right in the direct sunlight, but it's very nearby, so it's in a very bright location, if that makes sense. And the last video was kind of a funny one. We were addressing an article that's been going around a lot. And it's an article that claims that planting trees in square holes makes them grow better. And because we were getting an enormous amount of messages with you guys linking that article to us and wanting to know our thoughts, we thought it would make for kind of a fun video. In the end, I don't think the article was really hurting much. I mean, you can dig a square hole or a round hole, and I think that you will have success as long as you're digging that hole the proper size. Whether it's square or circle, it needs to be 2 to 5 times wider than your root ball and just as deep as the root ball, not any deeper. So as long as you're hitting that size, it doesn't matter what shape you're digging the hole in. But I just wanted to address some of the inaccuracies in the article, and it was kind of poorly written and not backed up by any kind of study or like solid information, I felt. So I just wanted to go through the article and talk about it. And I do know that there are some people, some authoritative figures in the gardening realm who do dig square holes and have success with that. Luke from MI Gardener got on and said, hey, I actually I plant in circular holes, but I know that the head gardener at Kew Gardens in the UK digs square holes. He uses a flat shovel, so I don't know if he digs square holes because that's just the shape you get when you use a flat edge shovel instead of one that's rounded, or if he does it because he feels like they grow better that way. So I don't know, take that for what it's worth. Jenny said the photo attached to the article does not even look like they're digging for a tree. It looks like they're making a fire pit. Why is the grass cut away in a circle? Definitely does not seem legitimate. Yeah, that was one of the other things. I looked at the pictures in the article and I just thought, I don't know, this just doesn't make very much sense to me. Why would you cut the grass away in a circle and then proceed to dig a square hole? I don't know. So Lindsay says, if you take their logic of creating a container effect using a circle, wouldn't the same thing happen with a square? They were never clear on why that couldn't happen with a square. And that's the whole thing. It just doesn't make like a ton of sense to me, because let's say you have a circle hole or a square hole. Your roots, either way, if you're dealing with a non-root bound plant. So if you put a root bound plant in a square or a circle hole and you don't address that problem, it'll still want to grow in a circle. You've got to address that problem first if that's what you've got going. But if you have addressed the problem or you have a healthy root ball, those roots, they'll come out and they've got an end to them. So if they hit the wall of a hole, I don't know how they would be able to tell if it's a circle or a square. Like, I don't know if there's like a square here, if they hit it on the side, are they going to be able to tell like, ooh, I think I sense a 90-degree angle a couple inches down, so I'm just going to go ahead and grow into the native soil instead of starting to turn around in a circle. It just doesn't make that much sense to me. Meredith says, I've heard that willow trees soak up water and are good to help dry up swampy areas. Is this true? Yes. Willow trees, birch trees, alder trees are all ones we recommend for really boggy areas. They do really well. Jake said, was there an actual author or person's name to which this article is attributed, or is it just an uncredited blob someone found somewhere and just started chain mailing it to people? There was an author to this article. I don't think I really talked about that in the video. Christopher said, can you please tell us a little bit about how you feel about staking trees? So, and he said that he has read so many contrasting opinions. My opinion really on staking is I only stake something when I see it start to lean, which is not that often really. Every once in a while I'll have to run out and stake something up, but typically everything does really well. thankfully, and we get a lot of wind too. We do have one of our red point maples on the west side. We do need to stake that, and we will probably do a video showing you because it's kind of an established tree-ish. Like it's been in the ground, what, 2 years, and it's just starting to lean a little bit. So we'll show you when we do that. Retro Gal says, instead of discussing right and wrong methods, why not do a trial yourself? Plant the same variety in a round hole and a square hole, give them the same care, and we can all watch the results. So a few things about that. One, the article or the author stated in the article that plant studies had already been done, which I would love to see. And that was one of the things, like there was no footnote, there was no referring back to that study. And that's what I'd like to see from anybody else too, who still recommends to plant in square holes. Like, have they actually tried it out side by side with the plant? It just, to me, it's not something I'll probably be testing because one, it would take forever because it will take a while for trees to get established and all that business. And also, I personally believe it's a little bit of an absurd idea. So it's not something I will be testing. If I tested every like random thing that I read, I would have tests. I'd have to have fields for testing. So it's probably not something that I will do. And the last question is from Tiffany. She says, Laura, do you ever get sick? You post pretty much every day and always seem to look great and have good energy levels. I feel like I've been sick all month and don't get how you never seem to get sick. Thank you. You know, I've seen that question quite a lot, and so I thought I would answer it. I have been fortunate to not get sick very often. You can tell in some of our videos, you can tell my voice is a little bit different, like it's a little bit deeper, and I'll occasionally get a cold or something like that. You can tell, and this is not when I was sick, but we were doing a gardener supply gift guide one year. I think it was 2 years ago, and I'd had a root canal that morning, and I was slurring and like drooling through that video. That was a super hard one. We were kind of on a timeline or a time crunch, and we needed to get it done, and so I just lisped and like struggled through that video. And I think maybe 1 or 2 people were like, is everything okay with you right now? It really wasn't. I was in pain. But no, I've been really fortunate. I don't know, come from sturdy stock or something. But I don't get sick very often. I'll probably get sick next week now that I've said it though. Knock on wood. I'm not superstitious. I'm a little stitious. All right, guys, so that's it for this Monday's video. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. We have some really fun projects coming up. I am in full-on planning mode, and I have been ordering seeds and plants and all kinds of stuff. Like, I have some really fun new projects for our vegetable garden area and for some other areas. So anyway, I'm going to be sharing a lot of those things here coming up pretty soon, and we also have some fun like winter/spring projects coming up. So be prepared for that. Hope you all have a really great week, and we will see you in the next one. Bye.